have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm back.
Welcome back, Ann. And thank you, Yetta Curlin, for filling in last week.
Thank you very much. You did a great job, Yetta. It's not an easy show to do, especially for the first time. And I thought you did wonderfully. And we'll look forward to having you back and my being able to take more time off. But I'm happy to be back. Hi, Andy.
We're very happy to have you because there's so much news to go through.
Yes, there is. Let's get to it.
Yes. Well, starting off with the State of the Union speech, where gay issues and people made cameo appearances.
We'll run through the little list. Vive la France, as the French Assembly opens marriage and adoption to same-sex couples. Now it has to go on to the Senate there.
The Violence Against Women Act has cleared the U.S. Senate with sexual orientation LGBT provisions intact, but now it's on to the Republican House.
We follow everything step by step, and I know what you most want us to talk about is Pope Benedict XVI resigning.
Is he gay?
Yes.
Yes.
You can tell by the shoes. In the midst of multiple scandals and chaos, his successor will be drawn from equally reactionary men he himself appointed, if not more so.
It's nice work if you can get it.
I'm not so sure.
Well, I'm saying being succeeded by people that you appointed.
Okay.
That's nice work if you can get it. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta has extended some benefits to the domestic partners of military personnel, but one service member just died without being able to win benefits for her widow.
And more will before this all goes into effect. Civil unions advance in Colorado, but the marriage bill has stalled in Hawaii, and we're moving ahead on marriage in Illinois.
Indiana's Republican-controlled legislature has delayed a vote on the anti-gay marriage amendment pending the U.S. Supreme Court decisions on same-sex marriage this spring.
And under the gun of corporations who don't like them being mean to us. A mayor in Ohio of a small town has resigned after insulting one of her police officers repeatedly, who is openly gay.
A school board in Florida is looking at banning all student clubs in order to keep a gay-straight alliance out of a middle school.
That doesn't usually work. Police do not think the murders of 3 gay men in New York in recent weeks are related.
But we do have some very important information for you about safety in terms of dating, basically.
Yeah. Out gay athletes are worried about the Winter Olympics coming up in the increasingly anti-gay Russia next year.
All right.
That's not a good situation. But let's start here in our country with President Obama and the State of the Union address.
He likes us. He really likes us. Well, I mean, he had talked about us a couple of times in his inauguration speech, and when he did the State of the Union speech, he returned to the old locution of calling us who you loves. You know, no matter who you love. He put that right up pretty far up top.
It was. It was up top. It was about.
I don't think John Boehner knew what he was talking about. But it sure made Marco Rubio nervous. He was sweating.
Yeah, that was some opening statement about everybody being successful no matter where they live or what they do or who they love. So, okay, great, we'll take that. Although some people are concerned that he's not saying who you are to include those who have had gender reassignment surgery. So more education would be done. Then he got to military things, and he got to equal benefits for military families, gay and straight, which is a locution we appreciate and like.
But of course he can't do that unless we get rid of the Defense of Marriage Act, which is on the table in the court.
and further details on that in a second. He also referred to needing to fulfill the promise of an AIDS-free generation.
Yes, he did. I was surprised to hear anything about AIDS at this point, because it's still around, folks, and infections are rising
and those
in the United States and elsewhere.
Those who are AIDS activists and working on these issues nationally and internationally responded immediately with, this is all very nice to hear, but here is some action we'd like to see. So we'll see whether any of that gets followed through on. And there were also people in the audience who were relevant to us. Apple CEO Tim Cook, who was sitting with Michelle Obama, because there was a reference to Apple bringing jobs back to the U.S.
Right.
So even though he wasn't referred to in a gay context, we all know that Tim Cook is an out gay man, reasonably out. And then the others were, Jerry Nadler, our representative here in our congressional district. All the Congress people have one ticket to give away to this State of the Union speech, and he used his to give it to a woman, U.S. citizen, whose partner is a woman from Peru who is about to be kicked out of the country. Even though they're married, they got legally married, but they of course don't have the same rights a heterosexual couple would have to have them both be here. And the partner has multiple sclerosis and is in a clinical drug trial at the NIH, and still she's being kicked out of the country.
And the president had a woman from the military whose partner is the general.
Exactly, to emphasize his interest in giving equal benefits to all military families of whatever configuration.
Right. But the Defense of Marriage Act does prevent him from doing that all the way. But this was the week when Leon Panetta, short of leaving, now of course it may take a while to confirm Chuck Hagel. That's since people are threatening to, some Republicans are threatening to hold it up as long as possible, if not stop it.
Well, he's publicly committed to partner benefits too. So whether it's Panetta or Hagel,
Panetta had a little more experience working for gay rights and doing things. I mean, there's always the level of enthusiasm and what kind of a priority you make it.
Yeah, but they're operating at the direction of the White House.
We got some damn email from some viewer complaining that all this stuff is a distraction from military preparedness. I mean,
we did?
Yeah, you didn't read that one.
No.
All right.
Well, Secretary of Defense Panetta announced, because we've been pushing a lot lately and saying, hey, weren't you supposed to be studying this when you got rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell? Hasn't it been more than a year? Isn't it time to start looking at what benefits you can give, even with the Defense of Marriage Act in place? And so he announced several benefits that they are handing out to military families with same-sex partners.
And they include the issuance of military identification cards for domestic partners, access to family support initiatives, and joint duty assignments. These are big.
Yes, they are big.
But it does not include health care, housing, survivors benefits, which are restricted by DOMA and, they say, other federal statutes.
So there are the ones
Burial rights he could have given us.
Yeah,
he didn't.
Well, that's the thing. There are some rights he has given, and they're important and substantial and allow same-sex partners and children access to the PX and a lot of benefits.
That's a big one.
That's a very
big one. They get big discounts.
Well, they make no money. They need these discounts.
Sure.
A lot of the military is on food stamps because their pay is so low. So those benefits they're giving, they won't go into effect for 8 months, by the way, by the time they get all the paperwork done. And training. They have to train people.
Don't they have computers?
Evidently not. Then there are the rights they feel they can't give under the Defense of Marriage Act, but there's a middle ground of things they could give, but they've announced that that would be a violation of the spirit of the Defense of Marriage Act.
We must respect the spirit of bigotry that inspired that one.
So that may take a little while. So what has to happen, and how they're getting around the Defense of Marriage Act in the first place, is they are not saying that they're giving these benefits to spouses, because that would violate the Defense of Marriage Act, which refers only to married couples. They're saying what you have to do, if you're married or not, if you're a couple or a family, you have to fill out a declaration of domestic partnership. Now, I think this is a very clever workaround to DOMA and the marriage ban, and they've used it in other federal benefit departments and employee situations, and it's calling the bluff of the right wing that made the mistake of only referring to marriage in our relationships, and all we have to do is get people to say we're giving it to partners.
Some of the states, they've been more clever where they've said marriage and marriage-like relationships, which does ban a lot of domestic partner things.
So this covers all branches of the military, and Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano has added the Coast Guard onto this, who would not normally be
because it's not a military
included.
branch.
Exactly.
Right.
So
good for her.
But unfortunately, this does not help the surviving wife of Chief Warrant Officer Charlie Morgan, who you may remember as having served for 20 years in the military, most recently in the New Hampshire National Guard. She developed breast cancer and was given a diagnosis or prognosis of just a few months to live, and became very active as an activist, filed a lawsuit for benefits for her wife, lobbied John Boehner to stop defending the Defense of Marriage Act in court.
What did he say?
He didn't meet with her. He had his aide meet with her, and they all nodded, and then went off and did their own thing. And the governor of New Hampshire had her recite the Pledge of Allegiance at her swearing in a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie Morgan died and in the last week, and her surviving wife and daughter will not be eligible for any of these benefits.
Well, her suit is ongoing, though, I assume.
Yes, the lawsuit could affect that.
Just like with Edie Windsor, whose partner is dead, and now she's of course suing for benefits that come after death.
Yes.
But that's essentially what.
It's different, but the lawsuit may give them some access to this. But as a general rule, if she just died,
yes. But some things do go back, like with all the people who sued over they were discharged for homosexuality, honorably discharged, but they were given half benefits. I don't know who had that bright idea, but they did it, and they went back several years to cover people.
I still think that's a little different, but not worth spending our time on at the moment. Let's instead take a look at the local news report from New Hampshire about Charlie Morgan.
A victory for same-sex couples today. Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta ordered some military benefits extended to same-sex spouses, including hospital visitation and casualty notification. This decision comes one day after a New Hampshire woman died fighting to have her wife receive her military survival benefits. Nick Spinetto is live in the studio now with all the details. Nick?
Well, yeah, Chief Warrant Officer Charlie Morgan was a key figure in the LGBT community's fight for equal rights. She died over the weekend after a long battle with breast cancer. Morgan served in the U.S. Armed Services since 1982 and was a member of the New Hampshire National Guard. Through the years, she fought plenty of times in the Middle East, but the biggest battle of her life would be here at home.
It was Charlie Morgan's dying wish.
I need to make sure that my family's taken care of.
A member of the Armed Services for nearly 2 decades, Morgan publicly came out when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed in 2011. When same-sex marriage was legalized in New Hampshire, she married her girlfriend of nearly 15 years. The two had a daughter. Life was good. But then last year, Charlie was diagnosed with cancer. She was given months to live. The final year of her life, she spent it battling Washington politics, namely the Defense of Marriage Act, nicknamed DOMA.
This is what this means. This means that Karen wouldn't be eligible for anything.
DOMA denies military spouses of same-sex couples survivor benefits, meaning no health care, no Social Security.
And she really gave a face to the fight for full LGBT military equality and what it really means for a family like hers to be left behind by discriminatory laws.
Zeke Stokes is from OutServe SLDN, which is an association that's been working to get equal rights for gay and lesbian military families. The organization worked with Charlie to overturn DOMA, but today it still stands, meaning Morgan's wife Karen will not receive the same survivor benefits a straight spouse would receive.
That's a tragic thing for for her, and it's a tragic thing for our country because it doesn't represent the best we have to give to the families who support our service members.
Though Charlie Morgan is gone, Stokes says they will continue her legacy.
Charlie's fight for equality will outlive her fight with cancer. Charlie Morgan was a courageous fighter for our country. She was a courageous fighter for her family. Gay and lesbian service members are providing the same service, they're taking the same risks, they're making the same sacrifices, and they should be treated as first-class citizens. They should not be treated as second-class citizens by the country they serve.
And the U.S. Supreme Court will discuss the Defense of Marriage Act next month. They're expected to make a decision on it in June. The funeral for Chief Warrant Officer Charlie Morgan is Thursday afternoon at South Church in Portsmouth. Live in the studio, Nick Spinetta, WMUR News 9.
Well, that's one time when I can say thank you for your service.
Absolutely. She was a wonderful activist.
But it's so infuriating to hear these stories. It just makes you mad. And I hope more people get mad and demand action, because repeal of the defense, we're looking at the courts, and we don't know what's going to happen in this court case, the Supreme Court.
Absolutely not.
We may have to repeal this through the Congress. And so let's see. Anyway.
Well, in other news, maybe she'll end up with this. Obama awarded the 2012 Presidential Citizens Medal to Jean Manford, the founder of PFLAG. And I'm happy to say that she was told it before she died on January 8th. So the White House had alerted her.
I do have to say,
yes,
it would have been nice to do it while she was alive.
Yes, that would have been nice.
Where she'd have a chance to say something. And they don't seem to want to risk giving this to some radical gay activist from the past, Larry Kramer, Frank Kameny.
Didn't they give it to Harry Hay?
I don't think so.
I'm hallucinating, sorry.
I don't think so, because you never know what they're going to say or what they're going to dig up on them. They really try to get it for Frank Kameny.
I don't think they're allowed to speak.
Well, but they're going to be at a ceremony and they just might say something. Jean Manford is a very worthy recipient. I just wish she were around to receive it.
Well, also speaking out is the Get Equal organization, the activists who did a demonstration the day before the State of the Union speech at the White House to demand action on the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which is one of the big agenda items still out there, not acted upon. We almost got it passed some years ago.
In 1996.
Yeah.
1996. It lost in the Senate by 1 vote.
And it passed the House?
No, they didn't vote on that. They didn't vote on that.
Well, it should pass the Senate this year.
It did. Well, did it?
I thought it did. But
read our email this week. Write to me, Andy Hum at AOL, if you're not on our email list, and we'll clear all that up for you.
Maybe we can Google it during the show. Who knows?
See, when we make mistakes, we don't act like Marco Rubio. We just play them and cover them.
I'm reaching for the water.
Yes, we do.
At any rate, people are pushing on ENDA. Senator Tom Harkin, who runs one of the Senate committees this week, promised a vote this year on ENDA.
How about John Boehner?
No one has any hope that it can get through this Republican-controlled House. Heaven forbid, and we will go state by state on these issues too, heaven forbid you should tell anyone they can't fire someone just because they don't like the fact that they're LGBT.
Be a violation of their religious liberty.
Evidently.
The Senate, U.S. Senate, did a good thing this week in finally renewing the Violence Against Women Act, and for the first time are including explicit sexual orientation and gender identity protections. Now, this again has to go to the House. Just as with the immigration bill, I think the Senate is likely to try to include the gay stuff, and the House is very resistant to it.
We've been through this before. It happened last year. The Senate passed their version, and the House passed their version, and they couldn't reconcile them, and that's why we're back at it.
All this could change if you get in touch with your representatives in the House and tell them it's a little outrageous that you don't want to cover me when I get beaten up in a relationship. That's because that's what the Violence Against Women Act
exactly
covers.
President Obama has nominated Todd Hughes, a deputy director of the commercial litigation branch at the Department of Justice, to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the federal court. This would be the first out gay person on a federal court of appeals. We have a few district judges.
Yes, we do.
Who are the lowest level federal court, and we have several others awaiting confirmation
all
to
over the
district
place.
courts.
in all over the place.
Some have been blocked, some are waiting, some are getting hearings this week. But Todd Hughes would be the first to the Court of Appeals, which is the highest level under the Supreme Court. And the U.S. State Department is putting out an advisory to LGBT travelers saying, you know, some countries are very welcoming and others will put you in jail if they realize you're gay. So
there's a website for this. Go to travel.state.gov and then do a little Googling to find the LGBT travel advisory. And it really goes into quite detail about explaining dating, sex, welcomeness, laws, all those kinds of things.
Country by country, you can click on each country and find out what the laws are and the situation in that country.
It also recommends that if you do plan to express your homosexuality in other parts of the world, that you get a good recent guidebook on that to get more local customs and things like that.
More on that later in international news, but let's update some marriage news around the United States.
Well, good news. Colorado has passed its Civil Union Bill 21-14 in its final reading in the Senate, and it moves on to the House.
Where it's, which is run by an out gay man and is expected to pass, and the governor is supportive of this. So in Colorado, they have a constitutional amendment against same-sex marriage, but they're moving ahead with civil unions, and this is a good thing.
Now, Hawaii does not have a constitutional amendment against same-sex marriage. Their constitutional amendment says we leave it to the legislature to regulate marriage, and the first thing they did was ban same-sex marriage, and then they did civil unions a couple of years ago, right? Just last year.
Recently.
Anyway, but we're hopeful about marriage, but it looks like it's not going to happen. The House Judiciary Committee there decided not to even schedule a hearing on the bill.
Yeah, it's dead this year.
Saying after polling his colleagues, they determined there was not the political will for it. So, folks in Hawaii,
Seems unlikely, but there does seem to be a will for it in Illinois, where, as we speak, the Illinois State Senate is, well, we're taping on Wednesday. Tomorrow, Valentine's Day, that's why I'm wearing red. They have picked Valentine's Day to have the state Senate pass the same-sex marriage bill.
They really want to rub it in.
Well, then it has to go to the House, and it has to go through a committee first, and then the full House, and then go to the governor, who, again, is supportive. So we're looking forward to marriage for same-sex couples being legalized in Illinois, I would say, within the next couple of weeks. That would be very exciting to add yet another state
in the
with
land
full
of
marriage.
Lincoln.
Yeah, and then they will honor marriages from other states, and anybody can come from other states to get married there. It doesn't mean you'll be married in your home state if they don't recognize it.
You will be married, it just won't be recognized.
Exactly.
And then there's...
And there are court cases pending in Illinois. People are suing for marriage rights in Illinois.
And the court there said, no, this case can go forward, even though the right wing says, oh, you got to wait till the Supreme Court rules. They said this is a totally different set of circumstances and people, and no, we're moving along with the case.
But if marriage for same-sex couples is legalized in Illinois, those cases will become moot.
Correct. Now, Indiana, the Republicans finally took over there in the legislature. Basically, we'd been avoiding a constitutional amendment there, right, because some Democrats were blocking it. But now, even the Republicans are saying we're not going to do it this year, a constitutional amendment against same-sex marriage, because they are waiting to see what the Supreme Court says about this. But they have time. It wouldn't really make any difference if they do it next year.
Well, there actually is a deadline for them. And first of all, one of the things that's gotten them to back off is they're getting a lot of pushback from major corporations that are headquartered there. People like Eli Lilly are saying, please, this is going to really mess with our
who can live and work here.
Exactly.
And the General Assembly approved the amendment, and it also bans civil unions. So it's extreme.
Well, the legislature passed this constitutional amendment in 2011. It has to, as is common in a lot of states, it has to go through the legislature twice and then go to a public referendum. So it has already passed the first legislative hurdle, but it has to pass again, and that's what they're delaying doing.
They can vote on it next year and get it on the ballot in 2014.
Yes, they can. But they run out of time at some point. They have to start again if they don't do it within the next couple of years.
And And to boost the marriage movement in Indiana, the mayor of Bloomington held a same-sex wedding ceremony for 13 couples. I like his quote, "By the power not yet invested in me by the state of Indiana, I pronounce you partners for life." This is Mayor Mark Cruzan.
And lest you think that when we win marriage rights in these states, it's all over, two members of the legislature in Maine have submitted religious freedom bills to try to undermine the marriage rights we won last year in marriage at the ballot box.
Well, they never give up there.
No.
It keeps, well,
They never
keeps
give
them,
up anywhere.
Keeps them in business. Well, we're not giving up in Oregon, where the backers of same-sex marriage want to take it to the ballot in 2014. Now, I mean, maybe, certainly the tide is turning on all this kind of stuff, but the warning about 2014 is it's not a presidential year. It doesn't bring out all the natural liberal constituencies, so you're taking more of a chance when you do that.
And Oregon has a state constitutional amendment against same-sex
And
marriage.
that's what they want to repeal.
They have to repeal it, so that's what this ballot measure would
But
be.
it is leading in the polls 54 to 40, but
Well, it's leading in the polls in Texas, too, where 2/3 of the public supports marriage or civil unions.
or civil unions.
Or civil unions. It's about a third.
Yeah.
So some Democratic representatives in Texas have introduced a repeal of the 2005 constitutional amendment against same-sex marriage there. I would say, slim and none, and slim has left the room.
Texas is changing.
It needs a 2/3 vote in the legislature and a public referendum to repeal the constitutional amendment. The people could be for it. The legislature, I don't think so.
And then there's a group called Faith and Freedom, which is suing the National Cathedral in Washington because it received a $700,000 grant from the National Park Service, part of their Save America's Treasures program. I'm not sure how sanguine I am about money going to churches to save them, but I guess they do that around the world.
It's a landmark thing, I think.
Well, anyway, they want to sue them because they say they're for same-sex marriage. They're doing same-sex marriages there.
So heaven forbid they should fix the storm damage on the church.
Want any government money. Well, I don't want any government money going to religion, period. But
well, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops certainly has its standards. It has threatened to oppose immigration reform if immigration reform includes rights of binational same-sex couples to be in this country.
They've written a letter to the president about this.
That would be Cardinal Dolan, the head of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. And, of course, Senator Marco Rubio and other right-wing Republicans have said, we can't let this become a central issue in immigration reform. No one's saying it should be. No one's saying it should be a central issue. We're just saying this should be part of it.
They are saying it is a deal breaker.
Exactly.
I mean, for the Catholic Church to say this,
at the same time they say they're against discrimination of any kind.
Oh, yeah, right. But you're talking about affirming gay relationships, which is against God's law.
Evidently.
Yes.
So 10 Republican senators filed an amicus brief with the Supreme Court defending the Defense of Marriage Act. Roger Wicker of Mississippi, Orrin Hatch, Saxby Chambliss, Dan Coates, Thad Cochran, Mike Crapo of Idaho, Charles Grassley, who's a member of the family, in case you've forgotten. Lindsey
Grassley is?
Yes.
The family, meaning that right-wing group?
Yes.
I thought you meant our family.
No, that would be Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell.
They signed it too?
Yes.
Oh, God.
And Richard Shelby. Now, others have said...
Orrin Hatch is gay.
Is he?
Well, the story's about him too.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's 3 out of 10 on the list.
We're all...
But the real question is, why only 10 of these Republicans citing this? Why not all the other 35 of them? And the answer is... These are the guys who who voted for the Defense of Marriage Act in 1996 in the Senate. These are the guys who were there. The rest weren't there.
And their rights are being threatened.
Well, here's what they say in their brief, that the Department of Justice is impugning their motives by saying that they had any animus towards us in passing the Defense of Marriage Act, that the Defense of Marriage Act promotes uniformity of benefits only to straight people, And without the Defense of Marriage Act, states would have an incentive to legalize same-sex marriage. And the whole thing's just too confusing anyway.
It is too confusing, and if you really want to be confused, read all the analyses about the court cases that are coming up. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves on this, but there was a really good article by a guy named Bob Agelko this week about how that, this could end up, in the Prop 8 case in California, we've talked about it a little bit before, could end up, if standing is denied to the supporters of Prop 8, then it could end up just affecting the two couples, the four couples, two couples that were affected by this. Seriously.
But there are ways that you then work from that. I have thought for quite a while that, in fact, the state of California and the Department of Justice should, in fact, have made a cursory defense of these.
Right. But our side is fighting their right to argue this case. So we might end up yielding this result,
well, on the
which
other
could
hand,
delay things quite a bit.
And 20 state attorney generals, you can probably make this list yourself too, have filed a brief with the Supreme Court asking it to uphold the Defense of Marriage Act and Prop 8.
Well, some people may be
generals.
surprised to find out that they have Republican or right-wing attorneys general, even in what are we called, blue states.
Yeah. Well, we're not too popular with the Associated Press these days either. They have been putting out advisories saying, they put out style guides, and we discussed this a couple of months ago when they wanted to get rid of the term homophobia in their stories because they thought it was.
It's not a real phobia, and so they didn't really come up with a substitute, but.
Anti-gay. Because homophobia sounds too judgmental.
Well, I used to be very mixed on this. As you know, I'm close to George Weinberg, who coined the term homophobia. But ever since this came up, I start reading stories and say, you don't think homophobia exists? Read this story.
Exactly. Yes, there is animus. Why else do you think they oppose us?
No, it's fear.
Yeah.
It's fear-based.
Well, it's whatever.
We will get to that.
But the latest is that the Associated Press has told its papers and outlets all over the country that you should not refer to same-sex couples who are married, legally married, as husbands and wives unless they explicitly ask you to. So even if they're dead, you can't refer to them.
Yeah, generally, AP uses, this is from them, uses couples or partners to describe people in civil unions or same-sex marriages. Well, this was Evan Wolfson's point all along from Freedom to Marry is it's not gay marriage, it's marriage.
Right. And they have not gotten that memo yet.
This is not to say that I don't have gay married friends who don't want to be called husbands or wives.
By all means, or prefer spouse or whatever. Use whatever you want. But for the Associated Press to decide that they are not going to use the same terms they would use for opposite-sex married couples is disgusting.
Back to the Boy Scouts controversy, we have learned here, well, it's well known now, that this was all the result of a leak. So someone inside, this was supposed to be a private, I don't know how they expected it to stay private, but a private conversation within the organization about where they were going to go on this. And now they're kind of between, I guess you could say, a rock and a hard place.
They are.
They can't win with anybody
now. They can't. Well, when you sell your organization to right-wing churches, then it's very hard to make change. Either they lose us or they lose the churches, and churches sponsor 80% of their troops.
But they said that controversy proves that scouting still matters.
Well, they say that because they're losing members left and right. They are down in their membership, and that's why they're talking about this in the first place.
Just like the Catholic Church,
and
which we're going to get to later.
Yeah.
But
the whole discussion has so stigmatized gay people as scouts or scoutmasters. The fact that this should even be a question is so
Well, and the
stigmatizing.
fact that the biggest defenders, I mean, the Scouts hardly can defend themselves on this, but the right-wing groups that come in and defend it all use the argument that you don't want a homosexual man taking boys on a camping trip. They're just saying it. We're not saying they're pedophiles. Well, you know, but come on, they're attracted to males.
Exactly.
Would you want a heterosexual male to take your girls out
No,
on a camping
unbelievable.
trip? Why not?
You also got rid of a lesbian troop leader, may I just point
That's
out.
right.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
Other news.
in Indiana, they're trying to get rid of gay kids at proms. This teacher, they had a big discussion about this out in this small town in Indiana.
Sullivan.
Yes, and there was this local teacher named Diana Medley.
She wasn't even at the same school.
Right, but she was very concerned about this, and she wanted to start a gay-free prom where we only have heterosexuals that would
Along
be
with
outside
some
the
of the
schools.
so-called Christian parents and students. But luckily, the school itself has stood up for the gay students, has said anybody's welcome to bring anyone they want to the prom. The vast majority of the student body supports the gay students bringing same-sex partners to the prom. It really turns out to be a fringe group that's against it and turned this into a story.
But
I
Diana
think.
Medley treats her gay kids like her special needs kids. I think God puts everyone in our lives for a reason, but you can't figure out whether gays and lesbians have any purpose in life.
I don't want to give her any more publicity.
Well, I'm just saying, hey, come on, these are the attitudes that, why do you think all this has been so difficult all these years?
Well,
because
sure,
people believe
exactly.
idiot things like this, and we got to be...
I'm just saying her opinion is being trumped by the community.
And then there's Lake County School District in Florida, which wants to amend its rules regarding student clubs to blockade a gay-straight alliance at a middle school,
Excuse me.
Carver Middle School in Leesburg, according to the Miami Herald. There is an 8th grade student there who was persistently, we should name Bailey, B-A-Y-L-I, Silverstein, who was Bailey, who was consistently applying for this, and they did this at the University of Virginia after I left, actually. They wanted to get rid of the gay group, so they defunded about 60 groups so they could defund the gay group. That's how much they hate us.
Well, others have tried. But here's the ironic thing. At the same time this Lake County Middle School was doing this, the Lake County City Council, or the Tavares, Florida City Council in Lake County, approved a domestic partner registry for the city.
The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing.
Evidently.
Well.
In other educational news, a Catholic high school in Cincinnati, Ohio, is firing an assistant principal because on his private blog he wrote something in support of same-sex marriage, and that, of course, is totally against everything they stand for. And if you work at a Catholic institution, you're supposed to uphold Catholic principles, so no free speech.
Right.
And he's out.
Well, on the other hand, Mary McAngus, the mayor of Pomeroy, a little town in Ohio, she's found out that one of her officers was quote-unquote queer, as she said.
She's 78 years old.
Oh, now let's not be ageist here.
I'm saying she's an older generation.
There was that wonderful woman at the State of the Union who was 102 who stayed online for 6 hours in order to vote.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
I don't know if I would have the stamina. I think the building might have burned down by the time I got to the front of the line.
A lot of people stood out there, and that's why we are making some progress.
Anyway, she tried to get this guy fired, and it's backfired on her. She has had to resign as a result because the village, the police chief stood behind the guy, the gay guy, everybody stood behind him, and we don't discriminate on those bases.
All right, we're down to less than 20 minutes, so let's skip through some of this stuff.
Okay.
A House subcommittee in Virginia has killed the non-discrimination bill for state employees that had been passed by the Senate. It's dead in Virginia.
The gay folks who wanted to march in the Little Saigon Tet Parade in Orange County, California, went to court, and they lost because parades are allowed to do what they want to do. But this parade used to be handled by the city, and gay groups did participate. Now it's handled by a Vietnamese group, and they do not want them in there, and they don't have to, but they got a lot of political support.
And some of the LGBT individuals were invited to march with other groups in the parade and hold signs and be visible, so that at least happened. Out gay Massachusetts State Representative Carl Shortino, who did one of the anti-Mitt Romney, Mitt Gets Worse videos, which is very good, and he's a very popular young state representative.
From Medford, Massachusetts.
Has announced he will run for Ed Markey's congressional seat if Ed Markey ends up with the Senate seat from Massachusetts.
In Van Buren, Arkansas, the River Valley Equality Center wanted to have their fundraiser at the Sisters Gourmet Bistro. Sounds like trendy and liberal, but they didn't want a gay group meeting in their restaurant, and they canceled them.
In Florida, the out gay representative Joe Saunders and others have introduced a proposed statewide non-discrimination law for employment that would cover sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. It's hard for me to believe that will pass in Florida, but we'll see.
Matt Moore, who's an anti-gay activist, can't stay off Grindr and things like that, so he is selling his computer to get rid of it so that he won't be tempted anymore.
In Kentucky, both a senator and a representative have introduced a non-discrimination statewide law there. There's a rally at the state capitol in Frankfurt next Wednesday, the 20th at 1:30 for anyone who wants to attend and support that.
The guy who invaded the Family Research Council last year,
Lloyd Corkins.
He came in there with 50 rounds and a bucket of Chick-fil-A sandwiches, which he wanted to smear over the victims that he shot. This was a guy thinking he would, and so Brian Brown has a point, raising the whole issue of classification of things as hate groups is what he's saying. We don't want to look. They inspire violence against us. We have to be careful about inspiring violence against them as well.
So Floyd has pleaded guilty to shooting the guard at the Family Research Council headquarters. He is.
I hold no brief.
He has
for the National Organization for Marriage.
3 charges against him, including terrorism.
Right.
A couple of young members of the Westboro Baptist Church have walked away from it and spoken out against it. Megan and Grace Phelps Roper, their mother Shirley, when asked to comment, quoted a lot of scripture against us.
Alarming news in New York. The pattern, it's not a pattern of murders, but gay men are getting murdered from picking people up and bringing them to either a motel or their homes and things like that. Some of these are happening in Jackson Heights. All this, the reason for talking about this, first of all, it's a special concern here in New York where it might be a pattern, although police don't see one yet. But go to the avp.org, the Anti-Violence Project, avp.org, and read their tips for safe dating and things you can do to protect yourself in these situations. You really need to do that, especially everywhere. Straight or gay?
And a 9th grader in Oklahoma, 15 years old, who had been bullied a lot, shot and killed himself in the school bathroom.
God.
Not good. All right, let's move to international news. And of course, the top story in international news is the resignation of Pope Benedict XVI.
Well, I mean, everybody says it's shocking. I mean, he's
well, just because no one had done it for 600 years.
He's in failing health, and he's got a bunch of scandals hanging over his head.
And there's evidently managerial chaos in the Vatican.
Absolutely.
Those are the reports coming out, that the place was just falling apart. There were all sorts of
I have to
thefts
say,
and leaks. And
the statement from Dignity, which is the gay Catholic group, that we hope the cardinals will elect a new pope who will take time to listen to us. How about getting rid of the institution of the papacy, which is insane? I mean, come on, it's a self-perpetuating board. Why do Catholics put up with this? I mean, most churches have democratized to some extent.
They're infallible.
That, again, a bunch of BS that was dreamt up in the 19th century.
Please, we could spend many shows talking about the need to get rid of them. But the real issue is people have some fantasy that things are going to get better now. You go down the list of people who are being mentioned as replacements. This guy from Ghana, Cardinal Peter Turkson, supports the Uganda Kill the Gays bill.
He also suggested the condom use was worth considering for married couples in which one partner is HIV positive.
Oh, that makes him very liberal in the church.
Now, of course, Ratzinger, who is stepping down, said that condoms should be considered for male prostitutes.
Yeah. And also was the one who coined the phrase that we are intrinsically disordered and kicked dignity off church property.
Ratzinger was a monster. I really appreciated the opportunity to actually heckle him in person when he was still a cardinal, when he came to, with ACT UP, when he came to New York in the late 80s.
And there's a guy from Canada who's being talked about, and a guy from Nigeria.
They're all right-wing nuts, but Ratzinger has
and
selected
the Milanese
all of these
guy,
people.
And Dolan, they're all
but that's
rabidly
all there is.
anti-gay.
But again, it's the institution.
Did we show the picture of Ratzinger?
Oh.
And did we show? Oh, there he is. He's salivating over the gymnastic troupe.
The topless gymnast. And then there's a picture of me at a demonstration just in 2010. This is when it was revealed that he personally was involved in covering it up as Archbishop of Munich.
Yeah.
So it was right before Easter Sunday. We went to the St. Patrick's Cathedral, and boy, was there a cacophony of honks. The Pope, honk, as that's what the sign said, honk if the Pope should resign.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, just last week, one of the archbishops there in the Vatican had to clarify, he first of all, he made noises like there should be private law solutions to protect the rights of unmarried couples, including potentially gay couples. Well, he backtracked very quickly out there, back there. And just so that you think this is not just a Catholic thing, all this problem with sexual abuse and everything, big story about a Buddhist leader, 105 in New Mexico, who has been pawing at women for 45 years, and he got away with it.
A lot of stories out of Russia, which really seems to be devolving into horrible anti-gay stuff. Well, I'll give you the good news first, sort of. Television news anchor Anton Krasovsky came out as gay on the air in the middle of an hour-long discussion of homophobia. He's kind of cute. We have a picture of him. There he is. He, of course, has been fired, but he's not in jail yet. That's the good news.
Well, he better be careful if he goes to the Olympics. Now, these are taking place in Sochi. Is that
Sochi.
Sochi, which is where the Winter Olympics are going to be.
NBC's celebrating already.
But, I mean, it is, as we said at the top of the show, it's been getting so bad in Russia there, and the out gay athletes are a little nervous about being there.
They barred the Pride House that has been at previous Olympics. The International Olympic Committee and the U.S. Olympic Committee refused to do anything about that. Johnny Weir, the out figure skater, is giving stupid interviews
Completely
about,
stupid.
Don't be flaunting yourselves
he says,
in Russia.
I'm not going to be having sex in a metro station, and if you're doing that, you deserve to be caught. I mean, Johnny has always had a fairly low consciousness about his own sexuality.
A Russian politician wants to ban LGBT websites as a violation of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child.
Sure.
Russia is still on the verge of passing this no promo homo law nationally. Meanwhile, St. Petersburg and other cities have passed it, and now Helsinki, Finland, Venice, and Milan, Italy have canceled their sister city status with St. Petersburg because of this.
If you're a sister city with an anti-gay Russian city, stop it.
The European Court of Human Rights and the Council of Europe are going to conduct investigations of homophobia in Russia because it's getting worse and worse. And in Belarus, former Soviet Union member, in mid-January, 3 LGBT clubs were raided by the police and the KGB, which, of course, are harassing everybody inside and accusing them of having falsified passports and raping people. I mean, it's just getting awful there.
And then there's Mumbai, where 30 people were booked for alleged indecent behavior following a raid of what they call a gay party in suburban Malad there. The accused were caught dancing indecently. They said it was a drug raid, and they didn't find any drugs.
Yeah, of course.
So they just arrested people for being gay.
All right, let's move to better news. In France, the National Assembly passed a same-sex marriage legalization law, including adoption rights.
Which was more controversial, but they passed it 329 to 229, and it goes on to the Senate now. This is because, folks, the socialists are in control, the Socialist Party. We don't have a socialist party here.
Well, we do, but it's
We
tiny.
do not. Oh, well, we do. I mean, of any.
There are people who call
well,
them
Bernie Sanders.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And
He's a socialist.
this British marriage thing is so confusing with this thing about we can't define how a homosexual marriage could be consummated, so therefore you can't get. You can't charge
adultery.
You can't charge adultery unless it's with an opposite sex person.
Yes.
And you can't have an annulment because then you would have to define whether it had been consummated. It's crazy.
Yes, it is. But other laws come into play when you pass a same-sex marriage law, and they're looking at how to do it.
Well, I could get more explicit, but I won't.
Interesting and good news from Germany, where the whatever it is, the
Bundestag.
parliament, has approved a law that allows the gender on a birth certificate to be left blank when babies are born intersex. So this was passed, and you don't have to assign the child to, if you don't know what. I mean, the tendency.
It's complex, and the urge to define things in binary terms is
perverse.
Yes, and it's beautiful to resist it. So
Yes.
congratulations to them for that. In Jamaica, activist Jared Jagai and AIDS Free World, which is the activist group, are suing to challenge the anti-sodomy law in Jamaica. He says he was evicted by his landlord for being gay, and they have a new constitution there that protects the right to privacy. So they're saying you have to get rid of these anti-sodomy laws.
And great story by Andrew Solomon, who wrote the big book on depression and also about having kids who are different and all that kind of stuff. Well, he befriended at one point a Ghanaian politician named John Mahama, who now is the president of the country. So his opponents there are attacking the president for having this association with this radical gay activist, Andrew Solomon. At first, the president first acted like he didn't even know the guy, and then he called Andrew and apologized. But this is something they're working out in Africa.
Great. And in Europe, a gay couple married in the Netherlands have moved to Austria because they bought and run vacation homes there. They are suing in Austria for recognition of their Netherlands marriage or registered, I guess they have registered partnership in Austria. And they say they're violating the European Union rules, so they're going to challenge that. All right, AIDS news.
Yes.
The Presidential Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS passed a resolution this week condemning the criminalization of people with HIV. It's a wonderfully strong statement. It asks that convictions be reviewed, that laws against HIV-positive people having sex be repealed, wants state attorney generals to work on this. It's a really strong statement. Whether it'll be followed through by anyone is a question.
Now, we can be pretty tough on New York's Mayor Mike Bloomberg, but I learned from a post editorial attacking him that they have been making Plan B, the morning after pill, available in schools, and they have a great record of bringing down teen pregnancy.
Great.
But the fact that they're doing it so widely is now being attacked by some of the parent groups who are saying, you're doing this without telling. But kids are allowed to obtain this at a pharmacy if they want to without parental permission. Why shouldn't they be able to get it in school? So good on you, Mayor Bloomberg.
In Chicago, Lurie Children's Hospital is opening a gender identity clinic for kids under 13 who are dealing with gender identity issues as part of their Gender, Sexuality, and HIV Prevention Center. This is a wonderful progression. And I don't know if you watch The Voice. I don't.
I don't know what it is.
It's a TV show.
Oh.
It's like American Idol, only on NBC.
Oh, yeah, I've actually seen it. Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the prominent contestants who didn't win but got pretty far is a guy named Jamar Rogers, who came out as HIV positive on the show, and he has a really interesting interview in Ebony online, ebony.com. You can see the interview with Jamar Rogers about HIV, sex, drugs, the African American community and AIDS. Very interesting.
Okay.
And the former head of the Whitman Walker Clinic in D.C., Jim Graham, who's been a city councilman there for many years, is under a lot of attack. The Washington Post says he should resign because of preferential treatment in awarding city contracts.
Right.
Yikes.
Right.
All right, in our last 3 minutes, entertainment news.
Well, I saw All in the Timing this week. Now, this is the David Ives breakthrough play from 20 years ago, the guy who wrote Venus and Fur, which was on Broadway last season. And I have to say, it's sort of like Saturday Night Live for intellectuals. You know, there's skits.
I don't like Saturday Night Live.
No, I'm just, well, I don't like Saturday Night Live either. But this one is like hyped up and uses a lot of clever themes and things like that. And most of it holds up. The first sketch is the best, which is about dating, which is kind of like a Groundhog Day, where they keep ringing a bell and starting everything over again. But if you haven't seen it, if you didn't see it 20 years ago, as I did, you may enjoy it.
Well, I watched the Grammys, which I know you didn't. There was one moment that I found a little annoying. Ellen DeGeneres and Beyonce, you've probably heard of them.
Yes, I have.
Were introducing Justin Timberlake, but the whole setup was that Ellen stood there staring at Beyonce, you know, sort of salivating over Beyonce, and Beyonce was made uncomfortable by this, and this was the sort of gag. And I just thought, really?
Yeah.
You know, that's
well, as
that's
I said, I
not
watched the
very clever.
BAFTA Awards, the British Film Awards, and of course, Stephen Fry, who's out gay, is the MC of that every year, and he's always kind of salivating over all the men, basically.
Yeah, but he's probably not having them recoil from him.
No. They're all quite happy with it.
The good news
or act
was
like they are, because they're actors.
The sort of out gay Frank Ocean performer performed, although he had pitch problems and his performance was a little strange, but he won 2 awards and that was good. And Janice Ian won Best Spoken Word Album for her reading of Society's Child, My Autobiography. That was interesting.
Well.
We went through the whole thing about the San Francisco Giants player who made anti-gay comments and then was condemned.
Made an apology.
He was also condemned by Kwame Harris, the guy who was outed after beating up his ex-boyfriend in the parking lot. But even he condemned Chris Culliver.
And then the basketball player in the Nuggets has started.
He's joined Athlete Ally, the Manimal.
Yes.
And
that's his nickname, the Manimal. We didn't make that up.
Exactly. And Sean Carson, a junior at MIT who plays third base and is co-captain of the baseball team, came out to his
the
teammates.
Manimal has
Very
lesbian
good.
moms.
And Jesse Tyler Ferguson will be in Shakespeare in the Park this summer doing Comedy of Errors.
He is an out gay.
He is.
And
Robin Roberts is coming back to
the gay
GMA.
theme has come back.
She is a not out gay.
The gay, and on Downton Abbey, the gay theme has come back with a vengeance, rather improbably, but it gave Lord Grantham a chance to redeem himself by defending the gay guy on the staff.
Shocking how they worked out everybody defending the gay. And I'm sort of mourning the death of John Kerr, who starred in Tea and Sympathy. Now he wasn't
South Pacific.
And he wasn't gay, and in Tea and Sympathy, the character wasn't gay in the end.
Per se.
But was accused of being gay and was bullied for it.
He was effeminate.
So it was a sort of very gay
It was a breakthrough
event.
thing, Tea and Sympathy.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, that's it for us this week. We will be back next week. Thank you very much. Write to andyhum at AOL.com if you want to be on our email list
Welcome
or
back,
have
Ann Northrup.
anything to say to us. Thank you. Happy to be back, and thanks again to Yetta Curlin for filling in.
Bye-bye.
See you next week.